Hi there. It is Black History Month, and every day this month I'm going to bring you the story of yet another Black woman in American history who freaking told us. And today we're going to be talking about Maggie Lena Walker. Let's start because all of these profiles are going to lean heavily on the actual words of these women, which are pure fire. So let's start with something that Maggie Lena Walker said. She said, "The greatest power on earth for the righting of wrongs is the power of agitation. When the spirit and power of agitation die among a people, they are doomed beyond all hope of resuscitation and redemption." She said that in 1914. Maggie was born in 1864 in Richmond, Virginia. Her parents were formerly enslaved people. They were working in the mansion of an abolitionist, a woman who had served as a Union spy during the Civil War. Maggie's father was drowned in the James River. Just about she must have been, I think, maybe 11 or 12 years old. She believed for the rest of her life that he was murdered, but we have no evidence of that. However, we don't have evidence of a lot of murders that occurred during that time. Maggie's mother was a laundress. She struggled to support her family. Maggie had a brother, and so Maggie started working at a very young age to help support them. She went to school, though. She got her teaching degree at Armstrong Normal School in 1883. She taught for 3 years, but she had to quit because many school districts at that time had laws preventing married women from remaining teaching. Of course, when you're married, your entire life is supposed to be focused on your husband. But when she was only 14 years old, she joined the Independent Order of St. Luke. The Independent Order of St. Luke was a mutual aid society founded in Maryland. And she wanted, mutual aid societies at that point were part of a kind of insurance company. They gave benefits for people who became ill. They gave benefits to survivors after somebody passed away. And so she worked in that Independent Order of St. Luke, IOSL, for quite a long time. And in 1899, she became the executive secretary treasurer. She gave rousing speeches her whole life. One person who saw her speak said of her, for 15 minutes or more, such a speech, persuasive, musical, and eloquent, fell from her lips as she called upon the Black men of Virginia to stand up for their rights, to fight slavery, to live for their children and for hers, that it caused old men and young men to weep. In 1899, the Grand Secretary, a man named William M.T. Forrester, stepped down from the Independent Order. He said the organization was about to die out. At that point, the IOSL had only about 1,000 members. It had 57 councils, which would be like branches of today, and maybe $37 in the bank and $400 in debt. So Maggie Walker took over, and she accepted a salary that was 1/3 of what Forrester had been paid. She said that my first work was to draw around me women. By 1901, 6 of the 9 executive board members for the IOSL were women. And with Walker at the helm, the organization grew to more than 100,000 members, more than 2,000 councils. By the mid-1920s, St. Luke had accumulated about $500,000 in assets. That would be around $7 million today, and had provided mortgages for Black families for nearly 650 of them. Now, in 1903, she founded the St. Luke's Penny Savings Bank. Here is a picture of that here. She had said that she had been saying all along that one of the most important things was for Black people to be able to save their money. And so in 1903, she founded this Penny Savings Bank. She became the first female bank president in U.S. history. That bank helped tens of thousands of Black people and Black families. There were branches in 20 states. It withstood the strain of the Great Depression, and in fact, at that point, absorbed all the other Black-owned banks in Richmond, and then it became the Consolidated Bank and Trust Company, a company that still exists today and is the oldest continually operating Black-owned bank in the United States of America. Maggie was indefatigable. She founded the Richmond Council of Colored Women, belonged to the Women's Auxiliary of the National Baptist Convention, the International Council of Women of the Darker Race, the National Association of Wage Earners, the National Urban League. She raised money for the Community House for Colored People, the African American Old Folks Home, the Friends Orphans Asylum. One historian said that Maggie Walker's life seems to have touched at every turn important elements of Black American history. Her mother did laundry for a living. That may seem a prosaic enough occupation, but historically it was far from it. For one thing, laundresses didn't live in as did most other domestics. This gave them an autonomy others didn't have. For another, they worked in groups, doing their tasks at one home one day and another the next. This is important because the idea of gathering groups of women around her sustained Maggie and led to her success the entire time. Here's another thing she said. She said, "The great all-absorbing interest, this thing which has driven sleep from my eyes and fatigue from my body, is the love I bear women, our Negro women, hemmed, circumcised, with every imaginable obstacle in our way, blocked and held down by the fears and prejudices of the whites, ridiculed and sneered at by the intelligent Blacks." She then tried to open she did open a department store through the IOSL. They bought land in the middle of Richmond, and this was partly because Blacks at that time couldn't enter stores through the front door, and in an department store, they weren't allowed to try on clothes. The white merchants lost their freaking minds. First, they tried to buy the land out from under the IOSL. They were unsuccessful in doing it. Then they went to all the suppliers and threatened them if they were to sell anything to this Black-owned department store. And in fact, the Retail Dealers Association, all-white organization, said, "Negro merchants who are objectionable because they compete with and get a few dollars which would otherwise go to the white merchant needed to be ousted." The department store only lasted for 6 or 7 years because of this. Maggie Walker was the most incredible feminist her whole life. In 1901, she said, "Who is so helpless as the Negro woman? Who is so circumscribed and hemmed in the race of life, in the struggle for bread, meat, and clothing as the Negro woman?" And then she said, "First, we need a savings bank. Let us put our monies together. Let us have a bank that will take the nickels and turn them into dollars." And that she did. Her savings bank that you see right here, on the very first day, took in deposits from nearly 300 people for about $9,500. That would be about $280,000 today. The largest deposit was $441. A decade later, her bank was managing $200,000 in assets, which is about $5 million today. And her entire home office was entirely Black women. She was the largest white-collar employer of Black women in Richmond. And she would later say, "Sisters, let us join hands. Let us trust each other. Let us believe in each other, and half the battle is won. Whatever I've done in this life has been because I love women. Love to be surrounded by them. Love to hear them all talk at once. Love to listen to their trials and troubles. Love to help them. The future of the race is in the hands of our women. I know that man is a very important consideration. Man is great, but woman is greater. Man is greatness, but woman is greatness adorned, beautified, and purified." Now, I am going to, if you're done hearing about Magdalena Walker, thanks for joining me, but I want to always have the focus of these videos be on the words of these women themselves. So I want to read you a big portion of a speech that she gave in 1906. And this is when the department store was still struggling, and she went before a group of Black businessmen. And in fact, her speech was labeled "For Black Men Only." So these are the words of Maggie Lena Walker. One note, she was speaking in a time of 1906, so she uses terms that we do not use anymore, like colored and Negro. But I will preserve her language as she wrote it. She said, A few weeks ago, when in New York, a white man, Tom Dixon by name, calling himself a minister, stood up one Sunday afternoon in the pulpit of a white Baptist church, surrounded by several of the best-known colored ministers in New York City, and uttered the most grievous slander against every colored woman in this country that human lips have ever uttered before. This man, calling himself a servant of God, standing in God's holy sanctuary on God's holy day, said, "You never hear of white men committing assault upon Negro women. Assault means resistance. No Negro woman knows what virtue is." If a colored man anywhere on land, on water, or in the air had to an assemblage of white men made any such statement concerning the white women of these United States, the white men would have arisen in their might, and that colored man would have died with that awful slander warm upon his lips. My dear friends, are we less to you than the white women are to the white men? Think of through what the Negro woman has come. From the time she landed at Jamestown until Lee surrendered at Appomattox, the word home and the word family had no earthly meaning so far as the Negro woman was concerned. The white man's lust for the Negro woman knew no law, brooked no opposition. The Negro woman was simply human cattle, whose value was measured by her ability to toil for the enriching of her master and her capacity to conceive and stock her master's farm with Negro children. The Negro woman, black, brown, or yellow, so unfortunate as to be good-looking, was by reason of her looks the innocent cause of her own destruction. There was no one to say to the white man, "Thou shalt not." The poor Negro man, more helpless than a crawling infant, stood by and saw his mother debauched, his wife taken from his own bed, his daughter brutally raped, and his sister ravished by her own father. And this went on for 250 years until more than half of the Negroes in the country are of mixed blood. And now, after this debauchery of centuries, with only 40 years in which our bodies have been our own, with the stench of slavery and the white man's immorality not yet out of our nostrils, we are told by a white man, using the church that he may better serve the purposes of the devil, that we are all bad women. My friends, it turns my blood to molten fire. For as it has been said, if the white men were to place a church upon every hilltop and a school in every valley, they could not right the wrong they have done to Negro women of the South. Hasn't it yet crept into your minds that we are being more and more oppressed each day that we live? Hasn't it yet come to you that we are being oppressed by the passage of laws, which not only have for their object the degradation of Negro manhood and Negro womanhood, but also the destruction of Negro enterprise? The wisest man that ever lived said, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak." Somebody must speak. Somebody must cry aloud. The afflictions and the persecutions of our people must be told. We must get together and reason together. My friends, there is a lion terrorizing us, preying upon us, and upon every business effort which we put forth. The name of this insatiable lion is prejudice. Prejudice is the most unreasonable, the most inhuman, the most unchristian animal that stalks upon the face of God's green earth. The lion of prejudice is ever ready to strike down the Negro. The white press, the white pulpit, the white business associations, the legislature, all show their prejudice against the Negro, and they are ever ready to strike him down. The lion, which we meet every day, does not skulk in the darkness of a pit, doesn't hide away until the coming of night, then to sally forth seeking whom he can devour. The lion with whom we contend daily is in Broad Street, Main Street, and in every business street of Richmond. The white man's prejudice never sleeps nor slumbers, is swift of foot, outstrips the wind, is never satisfied. If white men are forming combinations and associations for the purpose of crushing us out, is there one single colored man in here that will now deliberately go and carry his dollars to the white merchant so that he can fight us? Are you really going to feed the lion of prejudice and make him stronger and stronger? Listen to me, my friends. The only way we can kill the lion of race prejudice is to stop feeding him. My heart is heavy and my eyes are filled with tears. I am only a woman. At best, in a few short years, my sun will have set. But whenever the sunset of my life does come, it will be with the consciousness that I have striven and toiled night and day, not only to build this pile of brick which towers up and around and above us, but with the thought ever pressing upon me to help provide some means of employment for our women and our children. For the last time, from the very depths of my soul, let me appeal to you to give us your patronage. Spend your money with us. Help us to help ourselves. That is a heavily excerpted version of her speech to the black businessmen of Richmond. I think it is just as true today as it ever was. Have a great one. Cheers and happy Black History Month. And as always, be kind.